Hi, my name is Alejandro Pérez Pérez, and this is the AI Coffee Podcast. Every week, we will have one episode regarding one disruptive aspect of technologies for the time to drink a cup of coffee. Today, we have Alex Moltzau in the AI Coffee Podcast. You might maybe know him from LinkedIn, as he is a very active professional in this network, and he writes a lot about AI and global sustainability. Just to present him before we start the conversation, he has 3 different bachelor degrees in University of Oslo, the first one in Chinese studies with a minor in political science, the second one in social anthropology with a minor in informatics, and then a third one in political science. He also has 2 master's degrees, one in AI for Gov in Universidad Politécnica de Madrid and Universidad Politécnica de Milano, and then another one in social data science in Copenhagen University. Regarding his experience, he has done a lot of positions around the startups ecosystem. Also, he has been working for KPMG in the risk department, and currently he is working in AI policy, governance, ethics, international partnerships in NORA, which is the Norwegian AI Research Consortium. Also, he has been involved several times in his life in different NGOs, and the main one would be Young Sustainability Impact, and also he has a quite relevant TED Talk called AI and Climate Crisis, and he did it in 2020. So he was one of the first persons connecting AI and the new technologies with the sustainability. He has also written more than 500 articles about AI in a Medium blog that I recommend you to visit if you want to learn about AI and about all the social implications about that. And from my perspective, you might be really interested. So, wow, Alex, what an amazing background you have. Thank you very much for being here. Welcome. I have just one question before we start talking about the main topic of this episode. I have read a funny thing in your LinkedIn bio saying that your real surname is not Moltzau. Is that true? I have checked, and apparently it is a Chinese word or expression. Could you say what it is or what does it mean?
Yeah, so I have a background that is actually German. So the surname in Chinese is because I was given a new last name kind of when I had some Chinese language, and I thought that was quite a good thing. So I have a family background from Germany, but my German family emigrated to the US, and later my US family moved to Norway. Yeah, that's kind of how I guess my father's side ended up in Norway. My mother, she's Icelandic, so it's kind of a mix. And I guess now that I have a daughter, my wife, she is British Indian. So both her parents are Indian, but she grew up in the UK. So I think, our daughter is a big mix, and I truly believe it's so exciting, so many different cultures. I really love that.
So now I understand why you are so concerned about global sustainability, because you have a really large background of different cultures and societies around you. So yeah, I see that. But regarding the expression itself, does it mean something, or why did you choose that?
Yeah, it sort of like means kind of no war, like the Chinese characters. So I guess I am very much interested in trying to think about how we can to create more, peaceful and harmonious society. I think that's needed. I think there's always a need to strive for that. But in recent times, with the conflicts around the world and the conflict in Europe, it definitely brings, this to the forefront. We have to think about that Sustainable Development Goals too. I think 17 for the partnerships is good, but also like the goal number 16, I think it's very crucial that we work towards peace and strongest institutions, do everything that we can for that. So,
Wow, thank you for sharing these insights from you. And I agree with you that, and hopefully, peace and war are relevant topics in Europe at this moment. And hopefully, we need to talk about peace, and the idea that you keep this in your surname is really, really important. Yeah. And now talking about your TED Talk, I must confess that I like it very much because you said really clearly in 2020 that AI needs to be connected to global sustainability. Firstly, because It creates a carbon footprint, and this is something that is quite relevant nowadays and of course for the future, but also because it could contribute to obtain more efficiency about, I don't know, create new kind of algorithms in many different domains, and also could help to democratize, let's say, the access to resources somehow. So it is really, really relevant for me, and that's why I asked you to come. So can you maybe say something about that, or can you react about this?
Yeah, I can do my best. When I was working in Young Sustainable Impact, we had an organization that worked with young people and entrepreneurship. So we call those people entrepreneurs. So it was about, thinking about the sustainable development goals and then developing solutions. A lot of them were oriented towards technology. And I was in a few technological environments, and I definitely saw kind of artificial intelligence as a field starting to really have a significant impact. I think in the last few years, I have been working with artificial intelligence. I don't always hear sustainability mentioned in those communities. I think increasingly it has been. And I have really want to see those discussions when we talk about these large language models and we talk about these algorithms. We need to consider the social sustainability, the environment, and also governance, these technologies. So that's something that really engages me. And you can go so many directions, right? Like you have gone, some directions and paths yourself. And then I think it's a bit of a zigzag, it's a bit of a twisting pathway, which you find yourself on. I'm just really excited by the possibilities. But I mean, of course, they always have to be careful and thinking about when like ChatGPT, escalates so quickly, and thinking about the carbon emissions of using all that compute, we do like it very efficiently, and I think they do work a lot on efficiency gains. But I think there's like this overall infrastructure and architecture, how software and hardware goes together. So there's that. And how do we consider all these other sustainable development goals in relation to kind of generated text, generated images? That's going to be quite an interesting area going forward, but we cannot get lost in kind of automatically generated or kind of just reiterations of what we already know. We also have to think about the purpose of where we want to go. And that is not something that these algorithms necessarily can answer. And I think we have to think about the purpose of what we're doing, and to ensure that aligns with other, larger collaborations, to really try to avoid the climate crisis getting any worse, to think about, economic inflation, and other set of crises in plural that we have. So we cannot get lost in technology. We have to think about the purpose of why we're doing this.
Yes, I agree. And sometimes when we are focused on the technical aspects of AI, we used to forget the social implications. And some of them are related, of course, to the energy consumption, about the consequences of this use of data, all the training of the models, all the carbon footprint that it's going to the atmosphere, and all of these things that it's going to have a relevant role in the future. And actually, we create data, we create models, we create a lot of things that they are in the clouds. But actually, I mean, these clouds are metaphoric because, of course, these clouds are in servers all around the world, in data centers. And I liked it, the point you said that by 2025, which is in 2 years, only the storage of this data is going to be 1/5 of all the energy consumption of the world. So that's huge. That's amazing. And of course, we need to talk about that because it's going to be more and more in the future. I cannot even imagine how much information we are going to have in the future, because maybe we compare it with the past. I couldn't even imagine how much data I am creating, for example, myself. I compare with Alejandro 5 years ago, 10 years ago, for example. I'm talking about, I don't know, photos in Instagram. I'm talking about even this podcast, it's a storage somewhere. So we create a lot of data. We are creating more and more. Actually, all the AI models are trained with these huge data sets and corpus of information, and even processing them using ChatGPT, all of these things is such an amazing thing that expends a lot of energy and pollutes a lot. So yeah, we need to be really aware of that. So just to try to be a little bit more optimistic, do you think there is a possibility to find a solution somehow to try to minimize this as much as possible?
I mean, we talk about data as the new oil or as the new, but some people talk about data as the new plastic, because it's all like these consumer-based goods, that we just use and we don't really think about necessarily because it's just like out of mind. So microplastics, is very comparative, I think, to some extent to our data footprint, because we use all these consumer devices. We have this way of interacting with data in a way like it's not a conscious choice, like maybe we don't need to contain all of the data, and like maybe we don't need to have all of the data about everything, like what's kind of useful to have, and like what do we have as something that is temporary and existing in the moment. And I do understand the need for large companies, to gather a lot of data about the specific topic, run some algorithms on them, like some large neural networks, and then go like, hey, let's make a prediction, let's make a decision, let's make some money, this is the status quo. But I mean, like, there's a huge network of cables that's running all around the world in our oceans, and a lot of data centers and minerals that are being transported. And that's part of the value chain of AI. And it's not really something we think about immediately to any great extent. And the internet infrastructure drawn up across countries, like grids, lines. It's like we're running technology, but it's running on something, right? And it's like it's not removed from other worldly activities, but sometimes we act like that. We do have our head in the cloud. I think there are some positives to that, like on-prem kind of data centers are not necessarily super sustainable either, so let's be kind of real. There's positives and there's negatives about sort of cloud computing. At least on-prem, you had some kind of consciousness about like how much data you had and like how much you're using. But now it could just be sort of like anywhere, right? It's not like the data center is in your basement anymore. It's just somewhere in some other country, and Amazon won't really tell where their data centers are. Like, whether that's for security or for other reasons, that's certainly to be discussed. But at least, being a bit more conscious about all our data has a footprint, that's, I think, just a baseline, but it's not a baseline that's existing in our minds at the moment.
Yes, I agree that we can see it as microplastics. Actually, I really like this metaphor you did with the data, that it's spread all around the world in many different servers, many different data centers. I sometimes think that this is only a way to avoid looking at this close to us. I mean, there are like many different servers with all the data, all these processors that are even, under the sea. Sometimes I feel like it's only like, okay, we need to pollute, we need to create all of this stuff. Let's put it far away, not to be in front of our homes and these things. But actually, they are really big, they are bigger and bigger, and it's amazing how everything is going in this way. And yes, also, I'm trying sometimes to feel optimistic about that. As I mentioned before, I feel sometimes that, okay, maybe we are in a transition mode, let's say, that we are polluting more because of AI, because all of this data. But maybe this is also going to be part of our solution for not polluting, or to decrease maybe the carbon footprint for many other activities. Or even, for example, I mean, we can ask maybe to an AI how to be more efficient working with AIs in the future. So, I mean, maybe, I don't know if I'm going to meta, I don't know, but do you think that this is maybe a possibility in the future, or maybe that I'm dreaming too much?
Yeah, so I think central to this is also that the operational cost, and then it's also there are kind of several costs to thinking about AI in terms of carbon emissions and also like environmental implications, because you have this AI data growth, and also AI model growth. And there's a paper called Sustainable AI, Environmental Implications, Challenges, and Opportunities, where you actually have like researchers from Meta AI, Harvard University, University of Pennsylvania. They kind of talk about how these models, have been just growing the model size, and the growth is like, it is considerable. So even like with a holistic approach, there's trying to think about this machine learning model development cycle, and also like life cycle analysis of AI models. And I think that's quite interesting, to kind of be a bit more aware of the kind of carbon computing footprint, not only from training inference, like training models, inferring decisions, but also kind of like the operational, kind of footprint over time, data utilization, efficiency, and how it is in kind of experimentation. So, I mean, that's different, right? That's not the level of detail that we've been at with thinking about carbon emissions within AI necessarily. I mean, like, that's not in the mainstream discussion. People just say sustainable AI. And there's this distinction that's being made with AI for sustainability and the sustainability of AI. Because a lot of people are like, I'm using AI for agriculture, to grow crops and using less of pesticides, I think that's fairly legitimate, to be honest. You also have to think about the sustainability, sort of like AI models and the hardware and the infrastructure. That's my argument. I think I'm still starting out on this journey, because even diving into this for a few years is only a start, because the complexity is just wild. And as you said, two topics, artificial intelligence and sustainability. It's not like those two topics are very simple to understand. Like there's so many abstractions, there's layers of abstractions that you kind of have to cycle through as well to actually get into anything that's concrete. And when AI has become so buzzworthy, the layers are just so hard to get through, because people talk about AI all the time and they are not necessarily operationalizing the discussion, and it's not on a very detailed level sometimes. So because of it lost in the whole problems, that are arising with companies trying to have this AI arms race, really, because they're just like trying to roll out solutions. ChatGPT came out with, and Microsoft has invested $1 billion in OpenAI previously, and now they invested another $10 billion in OpenAI. Google, yes, they kind of put out BART, but they also invested like $300 million in Anthropic AI, and like, so I think, we have this very present escalation that's happening now this spring. It is AI. Maybe it's AI summer now. I mean, we're in spring now, like when we're having this discussion, but I'm not sure whether this is AI summer or like what is happening. They discussed an AI winter before, but where AI research was not like well funded, where it was not present. But this is pretty crazy. It's like we have to get like back to thinking about responsible AI and run these large computational infrastructures.
Yes, sometimes I have the feeling that we have just opened the Pandora box with ChatGPT, for instance, and that we have more and more AI models, more and more AI tools that requires a lot of energy consumption to be trained, then to be tested, then to be used. So sometimes I wonder if it's really worth it, because of course they are, I guess. They are really important. They are innovation somehow. They're bringing positive things to the society and the global communities. But they are polluting a lot and they need to be used in a really responsible way. So you mentioned the responsible AI, and that's quite an important topic, actually. So connecting to that, I would like to talk about the global community and how Norway, for instance, or the EU, or I don't know, more developed countries could contribute to create this global ecosystem that could contribute to create a solution to bring this new way of AI that you mentioned.
Yes, I do think so, and has been discussed. I think like AI development has been extremely unequal around the planet. I mean, a lot of technological development has been quite unequal, so to speak. And it is like important to recognize as well that some of the kind of innovations does not necessarily always just come from the north, like e-payments. Like it was really kind of an innovation from Africa, and I think we are kind of very, I think, stupid in the way we structure ourselves, and like that we don't support each other across countries, and sometimes I think that's highly detrimental as well, because we have some challenges that we need the whole world to solve. I mean, we will not do it alone. Like we need the whole world to work together on these issues, and AI is one of those issues. It's like artificial intelligence is kind of part and parcel of like current kind of development in a lot of ways. A lot of technologies that are being rolled out. We definitely need to work with other countries. So I mean, like I taking part in like this Center for Artificial Intelligence and Digital Policy. Like they have this AI policy clinic in Washington. Like I've been like participating online. And I think I really recommend that to anyone who is interested in kind of connecting with AI policy people across different regions, especially like Asia, Africa, and increasingly different regions. For me, that's been very interesting to have my perspective challenged as well. And there is like a report called AI and Democratic Values that kind of explore developments in a lot of different nations across the world. So, I mean, there is another article that's called The Role of Artificial Intelligence in Achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. and it maps out these SDGs, the 169 targets, but also kind of considering the positive impacts of AI and the negative impacts of AI. And like one of the things that they also identify in this article is that the research is sort of like not on the world a lot of the time. A lot of countries focus on themselves, and for me, it's like that's like guilty as charged, like I mean, Norway is a national network. We do work with the typical trade partners of Norway, the US, the UK, Germany. Like we do work a lot with those countries. There has to be some honesty here as well. Like we have not invested enough time in kind of expanding our horizon, to work with other countries, which we definitely should. And like we have to change that. And I think it's kind of one of the current big issues in the field of artificial intelligence, dominated by white people in their 40s, 50s, like men, not a very diverse range of people in the field of AI. That's another layer of the issue.
Totally agree with you. And Alex, sometimes I have the feeling that people wonder why AI is biased, and they don't see that people working for AI is not diverse enough. As you mentioned, most of them are men, are white, and they come more or less from the same background. So it's quite relevant. I mean, that's really important. And also, even without being aware of that, they are maybe biased, and everything they are creating is biased as well. So yeah, you bring a really, really important point to this episode. And now to finish, one of the last questions I have for you is actually if you could give some advice to a person that maybe is really interested on AI, because this person have read a lot of things about ChatGPT and all of the new stuff. But this person is not maybe thinking about starting a career in these technical aspects, but regarding maybe these ethical and sustainable topics around AI that you mentioned and we have been discussing during this conversation. So which kind of advice would you say to this potential person?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of opportunities out there, and to start on that journey, I think that most people will find it interesting to explore kind of foundational, kind of rudimentary discussions of AI. Of course, you have the Elements of AI course that's being rolled out across Europe. It's free, it's online, created by people in Finland to a great extent. And I think there's also kind of this Ethics of AI course that was also created, and it's really accessible. And I mean, if you want to engage with like the AI Policy Clinic, if you're interested in AI, if you're interested in policy and like several those kind of topics, and if we talk about sustainability, it's kind of relevant as well. I would really kind of recommend the Center for AI and Digital Policies, AI Policy Clinic, CAIDP. Check it out online. Other resources, try to see kind of what is available to you, but also to start thinking about this, start writing about this, start reflecting on what this means to you. And I think I'm not the right person to tell you what to do. I mean, you have to find out about that yourself. I think, how does this influence your life? I think that's a really interesting start, because we are surrounded by technologies now that try to gather information, try to organize it, try to make learning algorithms that take decisions on your behalf. So how does this influence your life? And how can it influence your life in the future and in the 5 years ahead? How will that change? That's, that's not for me to answer in completion, like, as you said, we need a lot of people to engage with these questions, and I'm just one person, so.
Thank you, Alice, for all of these relevant things that you mentioned. I did myself this course of Elements of AI that you mentioned from Helsinki University, and it was really great to start with because, it's quite easy. I think it's for everyone, but on the other hand, you learn a lot. So yeah, and it's free, as you mentioned. So I really recommend to everyone listening to this, maybe it's interesting to start learning about AI. Yes, of course. And for the rest of the things, I will try to put all of the things that you said as part of the notes of the episode. So thank you very much for everything. And just to conclude the episode, Alex, I think it was really a great one. Actually, we talked about many different things. And now you know that I usually ask 2 questions to end the episode. So the first one is, how do you like coffee? And the second one is, how may the audience can contact you if they want to?
I do drink coffee, guilty as charged. It's like I usually have one in the morning before, and I try to keep it not too many coffees, like maybe one. But actually, Norway is the second most coffee drinking country in the world, apparently. Like, this is a statistic that is thrown around, and I think we're beaten by Finland. So Finland is not only beating us in AI, but also in coffee drinking. And that's like very, very sad, you know, like as a Norwegian. Well, I mean, actually, coffee drinking is not the most sustainable habit. This is like, we're making this question really complex here. But actually, like, we could reduce our carbon emissions a lot in Norway, probably if we drank a lot less coffee, because it's actually grown in the equatorial belt around the world and it's transported around the world. So maybe we should drink less coffee, more water. Probably healthier anyway. So, and the second one is just feel free to reach out and connect on LinkedIn. Just remember to actually add a comment that you listen to this show. You know, I think that's one of the easiest ways. Just like press the 3 dots and then add the personal invitation, and then tell that you've found me through the show, and I'll be sure to add you, because I get a few requests, and I usually accept the ones that I've met. Or like people that have similar interests and backgrounds. So just put a personal invitation and shout out to the show, and I'll add you.
Thank you very much, Alex, for all of these insights, as you said in this episode. I have learned quite much, actually. And I think most of people listening this episode also did. So thank you very much. I hope you had a great time also, and see you next time. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And thank you so much for having me. And thank you for asking all these questions and making me think. You know, that's one of the best things about being together in a podcast, is getting time to reflect on these issues. Another like last recommendation, sorry if I just can throw that in, is to think about your domain, you know, that you want to go in. Because like we talk about AI, we talk about sustainability, but like, oh my God, like there is another layer of complexity. Are you going within health? Like, do you want to go within like poverty kind of goal? Like, what's SDG? Will you kind of be focusing on to some extent? And like, how does that relate to these other topics? So just to make your life even more difficult. So have an amazing day.
Okay, thank you, Alex. Thanks for being here one more week. If you liked it, please subscribe to the podcast and to the newsletter in alejandroperezperez.com. Please share both with your friends and relatives, and don't forget to give me 5 stars in Apple Podcast and Spotify. See you next week. Bye bye.